Okay, hello everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Okay, so the next program in chapter 6 is average of numbers. Assume that a file containing a series of integers is named numbers.txt and exists on the computer's disk. Write a program that calculates the average of all the numbers stored in the file. Okay, so we're going to assume that this file, numbers.txt, exists on our computer. Well, it's not on our computer, right? So that means we have to go ahead and create it, and so we will. And then there will be a bunch of numbers in there. The program wants us to write code to calculate the average of all the numbers. So let's do that. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and create this file, because otherwise we wouldn't have any file to work with. So on my Mac, I'm going to use TextEdit. I'm going to look up TextEdit. On Windows, you can use Notepad. When you use TextEdit, please make sure you go to Preferences and then make sure that the format is set to plain text. If you set it to rich text, your text is going to have extra formatting behind the scenes that you don't see. And when you save your file, that extra text or extra characters is going to be stored with it. So it's going to display funny, although you don't actually see it with your eyes. Okay, so just make sure it's on plain text. All right. If you're on Windows, you can use Notepad or any text editor you find comfortable with, or you find comfortable. All right, so in this file, I'm going to just type in a bunch of numbers, a couple of numbers, just two. So I'm going to type in 2 and 3, 2 and 3 on separate lines, and I'll save it as basically what the program said we should save it, which is numbers.txt. So numbers.txt. And for now, well, I'm going to go ahead and save it in our Python folder. So chapter 6, I'm going to create a new folder for this question, which is average of numbers. And I'll save it in this folder. And this is the same folder I'm going to save the program. As long as I save the two files, the program itself and then the text file, they should be able to see each other. I don't have to specify the path of the text file to the program if I have both of them in the same folder. If I don't have the text file in the same folder where I'm going to save the program, then I have to specify to the program the path, basically where the text file is. Alright, so I'm going to save the numbers.txt in this folder, and for now let's move away from it and let's come to the program. Now it's a good idea to always create a main function. In most programming languages, or in most programs, the main function or the main method is basically the function that starts when your program starts. That's the function that kicks in first. That's the first function that's called. That function has your program. It's the function that calls every other function, and so it's a good habit to do that. And so let's define a main function. Call it main. Now this is a function. We are just defining it, so when we're done we have to make sure we call it. Now the first thing we want to do is open the file, and so I'm going to use the open function. I need to specify a couple of arguments. The first argument is going to be the name of the file, which is numbers.txt. Now because I saved the text file in a folder, right, and because I'm going to save this program in that same folder, I can just type in the name of the file without typing in any path. Because they're in the same location, I can type in just the name of the file. Alright, so the second argument I'm going to pass into this open function is what mode am I reading this file in? Okay, what mode am I reading this file in? I'm reading this file, what mode am I opening this file in? So basically we want to read from this file, right? So I'm opening this file in read mode. And the way I specify that I'm opening this file in read mode is by typing the letter R surrounded by double quotations or single quotations. This can be single quotations, and also this can be single quotations. Now when you call the open function, passing these two arguments, the file name and then the mode you're opening the file in, you're basically creating a file object in memory. Okay, the open function is going to return the memory address of that file object, and so we need a variable to store that memory address. Okay, so basically that we need a variable to refer to this file object that's created. And so I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it numbers file, and I'm going to set it equal to the memory address or the reference that was returned from the open function when I called in these two. So when I pass in these two arguments. So now I have a variable that refers to the file object. So I'm going to try to read from this file. Okay, I'm going to try to read the first line from this file. So I'm going to call the readLine method, okay, of this file object. So I'm going to type numbers file dot readline. Sorry, and basically numbers file dot readline tries or attempts to read a line from the file. It attempts to read the first line from the file. If there are no lines in the file, readline will return an empty string, right? Okay, so let's try to do that, and then let's store the result in a variable called line. Okay, now if there are no lines in the file, readline, this method will return an empty string. If there's a line, it will read the line, right? So in this case, there's a line, so it's going to read 2, and then 2 will be stored in line. But the thing is, after it's done reading the first line, it's going to move the read position from the end of this line to the beginning of the next line and wait for you to call readline again for it to read the line. So assuming I had, let's say, a bunch of other numbers, you call readline for the first time, it reads 2, and it moves the read position from here to the next line and waits for you to call readline again. And when you call readline again, it reads 3, and then moves the position of the moves the read position from the end of this line to the beginning of this line and waits for you to call readline again. So anytime you call readline, the read position is moved from the current line to the next line after it's done. Okay, basically after it reads a line, it moves the position from where it's at, the current line, to the next line, and wait for you to call it again. All right, so I'll just delete these two numbers and leave these two, what we started with. Save this. All right, so we attempt to read a line, but we have to check to see if that line, okay, contains something. This variable contains something. If it was able to read a line, because sometimes the file, can be empty, right? It can be empty. So we don't want to, try to, we don't want to continue with our code if it's empty. Otherwise, we wouldn't have correct data. And so the way we check, remember I said anytime you call readline and there are no lines in the file, it's going to return an empty string. So the way we check is, there are multiple ways, but one way to do it is by using a while loop. I'm going to say while the content of line is not equal to, now the exclamation sign means not. Okay, so not equal to, while the content of line is not equal to an empty string, right? This is an empty string. This is a space, and this is an empty string. It's a string with nothing in it. And so while it's not equal to an empty string, meaning, okay, so if it's not equal to an empty string, if the content of line is not an empty string, then that means there's something in there, which means it was able to read a line. And so if it was able to read a line, then we can move on with our code. The first thing we want to do is, since we are finding the average, right? Average is basically the sum of all the numbers, the sum of all these numbers, 2 and 3, divided by how many numbers or how many lines. So in this case, average will be 5. 2 plus 3 is 5, and there are 2 lines, so it's going to be 5 divided by 2, right?